Trump is rallying in the battleground state of Arizona tonight. This as major breaking news comes from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. 2 criminal charges against former President Trump in the Georgia indictment dismissed by a judge.
Atlanta News First political reporter Doug Reardon is live outside of the Fulton County Courthouse tonight. Doug?
Well, good evening to you both. It was Judge Scott McAfee who has been overseeing this case from the very beginning, dropping 3 charges from the entire indictment tonight. Some people in that indictment faced all 3. Donald Trump faced 2 of them. They were perjury charges, so lying in court. And McAfee said that because Trump is a federal official, or at least was at the time, and because these charges are dealing with a federal election, he does not have the jurisdiction to prosecute those particular charges. And so he came out with a very lengthy statement today. I'll read you just part of what he said. He said, quote, "Because counts 14, 15, and 27 lie beyond this state's jurisdiction and must be quashed, the defendant's motions to dismiss the indictment under the Supremacy Clause are granted in part." Supremacy Clause says that federal law trumps state or local law. Lawyers for defendants in this case, including Trump's, have been trying to get the entire case dismissed, so this was a big partial win for them. And while Trump still faces a handful of very serious charges here in Fulton County, this isn't the first win for his legal team. He started the case with 13 charges against him. 3 were dropped back in March, and 2 more were dropped, of course, again today. Now, the case is really slowed to a crawl here after it was revealed that District Attorney Fani Willis was involved in a romantic relationship with one of the top prosecutors, Nathan Wade. The defense argued to remove her from the case. That decision is now in the hands of a state appeals court who will hear it in December, 1 month after the November general election. We did get a chance to talk on the phone to the district attorney's office today. They said simply they are reviewing Judge McAfee's decision. We're live outside the Fulton County Courthouse. Doug Reardon, Atlanta News First.